And today we're going to talk about flexibility training. And boy, if there's ever an area that I really struggled with, it was getting my head around the importance of flexibility training. And most people think of flexibility training as just yoga. But today we're going to talk about, of course, yoga is great, but we're also going to talk about strategic stretching. And so to give you an idea, all your muscles kind of connect together, like 600 and some muscles, and they're all hooked to a couple hundred bones. So here's your muscle here like this. And that's the bone, excuse me. And then you usually have a bone muscle here and a muscle here on a typical joint. And there'll be a variety of muscles, but we're going to use this for illustration purposes. Now, what happens when you don't use full range of motions in your exercises, or as you get old, without movement, you get little calcium deposits that start to build up here. So just so you know, you have little muscle filaments that slide back and forth in order for you to contract. Now, depending whether they're this way, sometimes they're this way, and then sometimes they're like this way in the muscle. And that's how you determine which type of muscle it is. So what happens is, instead of sliding back and forth like this is how a properly working muscle will have, you'll get these little adhesions that start to build up between these here. And then sometimes you'll get what's called calcification right in here, particularly around the joint capsules and that sort of thing. So this starts to cause a lot of problems as we get older. Also, it's a big issue for people who are working out a lot or into exercise, because any sport, whether it's golf or football, whether it's dance or anything, there's certain muscles that you're working a lot more particular to that sport than other ones. So what tends to happen is you develop imbalance both in the musculature, and then you also build up challenges like on your opposing muscles. So for example, a lot of people walk this way, but they don't use their hamstrings very much. So quite common, we'll see people in aging get very, very tight hamstrings, very, very tight calves. And what that starts to limit range of motion, then they start to slow down. Next thing you know, they start to crumple up all like this. This is part of the aging and degeneration program. So what stretching allows you to do, number one, is to make sure that these little filaments slide back and forth the way they're supposed to slide, like this or like this. I know I'm kind of making a mess here, but if you get the idea, not trying to get overcomplicated. So the question is what's the type of what type of stretching is best for you, and what should you avoid? One of the first things I would say is, one of the things I learned about in, bodybuilding training, of course, that was my background, is that every time that you contract a muscle like this, you're actually stretching its opposite. So if I go like this, I'm stretching my tricep. If I go like this, I'm stretching my biceps. So first and foremost, you want to cover full range training. If you're doing any kind of exercise, the more fluid and full the motion is, the better it is. And whether you're dealing with running, you can go to a running clinic and make sure that you're opening up the body and that you're moving through a full range of motion. That's very, very important, because that allows you to stretch what's called the antagonist, the opposite muscle group. Second thing that you want to do is you always want to stretch when you're warm. Another big mistake is a lot of people will start stretching before the muscle is heated up. And ideally, your muscle's a little bit warmer than your body, particularly. So for example, if I'm doing a workout with weights, say I'm doing the squats, I'll do some warm-up squats, building up in weight before I get into my working sets. And then I will stretch in between sets. Same thing if I'm doing chest or any exercises like that. If you're into running, you would do a little warm-up routine, and then you would start to stretch before you get to your race. Same thing in virtually every sport. You want to practice the motions that you're using, and then you create stretches to open up the musculature in order to get maximum benefit. Now, some people are saying, well, what's the best stretches for you to do, or the most useful ones? What I would say is, this is where you want to get a stretching expert. So a lot of people will say, oh, I want to become more flexible. So what do? They go out and they go to a yoga gym. You know, and there's a lot of great gyms out there, but make sure you're getting a quality yoga instructor, because a lot of times, you know, someone that's just gone through a teacher training, they're not really qualified. I would, you know, screen who you're going to go see. Find out someone who understands biomechanics and understands what yoga poses are proper for your body and or dangerous. I try and avoid those ones where you're standing on your head and doing, you know, movements that are, you know, very unnatural. I wouldn't do those ones. Kind of stick with a basic. Get someone to assess you. Get a professional. The nice thing about most yoga courses is that they're very specific to you, and they develop programs for you. For me, I like, you know, just stuff that works on my hips, because, you know, training as an athlete for so many years with my legs and stuff, I like what they call yin yoga, which a lot of hip openers and that sort of thing. But when things went to the next level is I went to a rolfer. We'll talk about that a little bit later, who had biomechanical background. So he was building, and in combination with my chiropractor. So what I'm going to share with you on this one is, and we'll talk about this in a later lesson about building your Jedi Council. So basically, I knew that I had certain structural, you know, developments in my own body from the chiropractor, and then he told me about which muscles were tight and which ones, you know, from my years of training. Then I went to the rolfer to kind of unbreak up these little calcification points, and it's not pleasant. I'll be clear. It's not a pleasant process, but boy, you can really increase your motion. And then from that, I built a biomechanically sound stretching program. So we're going to interview some people later in later lessons and that sort of thing, so you can kind of see how that whole process fits together. But the one thing you want to do is, once you get the right stretches for you that are based on your physicality, your particular sport or choice of exercises, then this makes sense. And ideally, you can work in conjunction with a chiropractor who keeps the spine and bones incorrect, and then with someone who's into soft tissue flexibility. That will improve your stretching program. And the most important thing to do is to do it consistently. So do your stretching consistently. And, you know, I really learned this the hard way. I didn't do it for years. I built up a bunch of these adhesions. Finally, I had to go get them broken up, you know, by my rolfer, unloaded, all that sort of stuff. Had my chiropractor adjust me right, and then develop the stretching program for me, and it worked amazing. So that's it for this lesson. Just remember to get your rolfer, your biomechanic, your chiropractor guy, put them all together, continue on your stretching program, and we'll see you on the next lesson.